Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now to the papers, as usual, and it is a larded, deep-fried feast for politics addicts. There's the front page of the Sunday Times, Ken Clarke in his memoirs, Maggie, May and Me, and, of course, the Prime Minister, Theresa May, fires the Brexit starting gun. That's what we're going to be talking about, probably all of the programme. May takes her axe to EU law, is the Sunday Telegraph's version of that. And the Observer, a rather more sceptical paper in all of this, has a story from Nicky Morgan, who was fired as Education Secretary by Theresa May. Hard Brexit will breed new bigotry, leading Tory warns. So we'll be talking about all of that. But we're going to start, Matthew, with, I think, the main piece of journalism of the day is the interview with the Prime Minister in the Sunday Times by Tim Shipman.
Absolutely, and Mrs May has now told us, at last, how it's to be done. She gives a recipe for her mother's jam scones.
Right.
And not much more, except the Great Repeal Bill, or Great Repeal Act, if it's enacted. In a way, there's less to this than meets the eye, because there never was any possibility we would decouple from the EU without legislation. But in a way, it's a little bit of a risk for her to focus on it so early, because it makes us focus on how she's going to get that through Parliament.
For all those people watching and saying, well, so what is this Great Repeal Act? We'll talk to Theresa May about that, but it's basically saying that from the minute we leave the EU, all EU laws cease to apply and they're translated into British laws, which, of course, can be repealed or changed.
Yes, it basically repeals the act by which we joined the EU, and it means we've got our hat and our gloves ready for when we decide to go out the door.
Marvellous. Now, it's an interesting interview. As you say, not a lot of detail there. Anushka, there's a very interesting big spread by Toby Helm, the Observer's political editor, laying out in stark terms the divisions inside the Conservative Party between hard Brexit and soft Brexit.
Yeah, that's right. Toby has written this piece about the problems that Theresa May face when she comes to actually trying to get this through. I think it's really interesting because it remembers that David Cameron actually came here to Birmingham for his first conference as Conservative Prime Minister. Yeah. Think back to this, right? He was busy mates with Nick Clegg back then. Apparently he named the big society 10 times in his speech, and he actually told his Tory MPs to stop banging on about Europe. Well,
that worked well.
Things have changed. Today it is all about Europe and this problem that Theresa May is going to be having.
Anushka, I use the terrible jargon, hard Brexit and soft Brexit, which is a bit like left and right or wet and dry, has become part of the political lexicon. But a lot of people have no idea what it actually means. Can we define these terms?
Well, we know Brexit means Brexit. We know one thing, and most people are now trying to talk about a good Brexit. I think really it is to do with that balance between immigration and controlling our borders, and to do with economic access to the EU. And those like Nicky Morgan, who are looking for that soft Brexit, essentially want to prioritise the economy and say we may not be able to control our borders as much as some may hope.
So do deals, stay inside a tariff-free single market and accept that you don't have total control over immigration is soft Brexit.
Is soft Brexit. And
hard Brexit is no, let's walk away, get out and start the new world.
Get out now, get out quickly, repeal the laws that we don't want to be part of. Although, as Matthew says, it's going to be quite difficult to do that because, in fact, all those laws come into British law and then Theresa May has to go through Parliament to get rid of anything she wants to. In
some ways, this whole debate is a triumph for people who've been writing in the newspapers for years and years and years about Europe. And Christopher Booker in the Sunday Telegraph has been banging on about this for years. His moment has come, Matthew.
Yes, here is one of them. Christopher Booker is so anti-European and has been so anti-European for so long that he's had his own column in the Sunday anti-EU. He's had his own column in the Sunday Telegraph. But I wouldn't say he's getting cold feet, but he's beginning to think. Well, he describes hard Brexit as plunging us over a cliff. He's beginning to get worried about anything other than the soft Brexit. The hard Brexit people, you will know, Andrew, don't want us to call it hard Brexit because that sounds hard.
Both sides
they want to call it clean Brexit.
Clean Brexit, yes, or sensible Brexit, or nice Brexit.
Fair Brexit.
Nice Brexit versus fair Brexit. That's even worse. Now, one of the key pro-European figures, right back to the Margaret Thatcher days, has produced memoirs. Ken Clarke is always good for a good quote. He's going to be on this show next week, I sincerely hope. But he's got an interview again in the Sunday Times. The Sunday Times are rather scooping the pool this morning, aren't they?
Well, this is extracts from his actual new book. I don't think you're supposed to use the word legend when you're talking about somebody
who's
alive, but Ken Clarke is a legend, isn't he? I mean, he just says what he thinks and he doesn't care. And
yes,
for those of us who love a bit of Ken, I do love a bit of Ken, we can have an overdose here in his new book. And what's really interesting in this extract is that he talks about his relationship with Theresa May and really says that they couldn't be more different. She used to say, I lock them up, he lets them out. That was when he was Justice Secretary. And he actually remembers back to the debacle of a conference previously when they had a row over a cat. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Whether or not a cat had been used to talk about someone's human rights. And I love this little memory that he has here, that he talks about the cartoons in the newspapers of his hush puppies and Theresa May's kitten heels attacking each other.
The Battle of the Boots.
Battle of the
Mind
Boots.
you, I know Ken Clarke. Ken Clarke's unguarded remarks are very carefully pondered beforehand. He's not quite as careless as you think.
I once asked him about that, and I asked him, why didn't you complain when Sky actually broadcast what he'd said? And he said, because I think it.
I think he and Malcolm Rifkin were caught with their microphones still on, saying all sorts of things. I think they said that Theresa May was a difficult woman, which was good for her, actually.
I bet he knew the microphone was on as well.
He was in front of a big camera.
Yes.
So we've talked about Theresa May, and here is a policy being discussed, I think, in the Sunday Mirror there, Matthew.
Yeah, it's a very
important one.
A very humane and also a very shrewd start to the Tory conference. Sunday Mirror, Tories end cruel benefit tests for long-term sick. It probably won't cost any money because you have to pay, the government has to pay for the tests. You could imagine how that was brought in Cameron's day. Somebody said, oh, let's crack down on malingerers who aren't ill any longer but haven't said so. Everybody says, hooray, let's do that. Then Mrs May will stop making these poor people go back for tests every 6 months. Everybody says, hooray, it's a gift that keeps on giving.
Gift that keeps on. And Ian Duncan Smith has basically said he wishes he was still there and could do it himself. So it unites the old and the new regimes. A bigger problem, perhaps, for Theresa May, Anushka, is this huge inquiry into child abuse in all its aspects across Britain, which seems to be falling to pieces.
Yeah, I mean, this is really quite shocking. This inquiry set up by Theresa May when she was Home Secretary, after we had all those allegations that started with all that we learnt about Jimmy Savile and then all these allegations about people in political life. And I mean, it is falling apart. It's had 4 people leading it so far. And now we've had 3 of the leading lawyers actually stepping away, Ben Emerson, but also 2 others from his team. We don't really know what happened, but there's a lot of criticism that one of the problems is it's too broad. There is no time limit on when they are looking at, and there is no kind of precise brief as to what they should be trying to get out of. And increasingly people saying, we're not going to get anywhere if we carry on like this.
Is there a moral about public inquiries generally in this, that they could, if they're very specific and they're focused on a particular injustice or problem, they may work, but if the bigger they go, the worse they are?
Well, clearly, this is a very difficult thing to get the bottom of, to the bottom of. And I know, as someone who's tried to report on this area, it can often be very, very difficult because of the people that you are dealing with.
It is Mrs May's inquiry, and it will be interesting to see whether she still takes ownership of it. If she does, it will be to say it carries on. If she's not keen that it should carry on, I think she'll leave it to the Home Secretary.
To deal with, Amber Rudd to deal with. Now, we've been talking a lot about British politics. It's very easy to forget that there's big political stories all across Europe at the moment. I think probably nowhere bigger than Hungary, under a very, very anti-migrant leader, Viktor Orban, and they've got a referendum on.
Yes, well, you could see why the Hungarians are worried, because they've got these huge walls keeping the migrants out. And this is a rather, for the European Commission, rather disturbing development that countries just have advisory referendums, which basically put 2 fingers up to the European Union. But because they're only advisory, you can't stop them doing it. And once the Hungarians get the huge majority I think they're going to get against taking a quota of refugees, it's going to strengthen Hungary's negotiating position.
And all of those Eastern European countries, of course, feel very different. They were traditionally the front line of Western Christendom against the Ottoman Empire and so forth, and there's a particular edge to the immigration problem for that reason.
Yeah, they don't mind using the term Christian in a quite unashamed sort of way.
Absolutely.
No, I think possibly the Hungarians are more of a problem for Brussels than we are at the moment.
Well, that's an extraordinary thought. Trump, Anushka, again, he marches on. A few months ago we were saying, you know, Trump's wobbling, Hillary's Clinton is coming back again, but he is extraordinarily resilient, certainly in terms of the polls.
Well, there's only 3 points in it, according to these polls. Hillary on 47.5%, Donald Trump on 44.4%. He just can't stop shocking us, can he?
Is this beauty queen story, which I confess, I'm slightly puzzling to work out.
I mean, I have to say that kind of women's rights is something that I'm particularly passionate about.
And he probably is not.
I don't think so, no. I don't think it's top of his inbox, no. I mean, this comes after this bizarre Twitter row with a former Miss Universe who he described as Miss Piggy. But now, people who worked at his Californian golf club say that he actually used to complain that some of the people who worked there weren't pretty enough or were too old or fat, and he preferred not to have fat people working for him.
But what you've got to know about him is what you've got to know about, for instance, Nigel Farage. He's not trying to win over people like you and me, and there's no point in him trying to be different from what he is, because quite a lot of people like what he is. We don't, but...
Yeah, but I suspect if you talk to some of those individual people, they wouldn't agree on the point.
No.
OK, very, very quickly, there's poetry in the papers, Matthew. Amber Rudd, the Home Secretary.
You may say so. The Home Secretary has written an ode to safe sex. Think of now and our romance. Oh, darling, you're less appealing. What you say is so revealing. If risk is your mood and speech, how about bingo on the beach? I think 3 cheers for trying, or 2 cheers for
2 cheers for trying. And finally, not on the safe sex theme, of course, at all, but on the kind of sexy dancing theme, the rooster that is Ed Balls carries on, delighted the country in Strictly Come Dancing, Anushka.
I mean, it's great, isn't it? Ed Balls, suddenly he's human, everybody loves him. He's not that good at dancing, it turns out. He thought he was. But I love just some of the judges' quotes here. "I cannot believe it," said Bruno. "What a comeback. Tony Blair would be proud." And then Darcy, "You were oozing energy and character. I didn't think I was going to see that musical bounce through your body all the way through." Or this one from Craig, "That's a sight I don't wish to see again."
I've been wondering all the way through, what is the great scoop I'm going to get from Theresa May? I think if she said she was going to come on Strictly Come Dancing, that would be secure in the headlines all day and all week.
Good luck.
Won't happen, I'm sure. But thank you both very much indeed.